and welcome to another edition of my Instagram Wellness Live series. I'm so excited for today's session. It's something I've been looking forward to for a while. Today, I plan to have Serena Hope's son from Breaking Taboo join us. She is the founder, and she is going to talk about their mental health week, which is coming up, which is Week, the importance of self-love, and mental health overall. And she's just going to give us a brief overview about why mental health is important and things of that nature. I am waiting for Serena to join us here live. But as a reminder, feel free to drop any questions you have in the comments below, and me and or Serena will make sure to address them during this session. And in the case that something goes wrong, like Instagram has a few glitches, we will just restart. So don't worry. I know Instagram has been pretty glitchy lately. I'm still in the process of recovering from COVID, so if I do cough or anything in the meantime, sorry about that. Um, Now we just wait, but in the meantime, has anyone ever heard of this nonprofit Breaking Taboo? If not, I suggest that you guys go and check them out. Oh no, we're having issues. It's at Breaking Taboo. It's a fantastic organization. Their goal is to, well, it's in the name, break the taboo behind mental health stigmas. They do a variety of things. They're always looking for volunteers and support. So if you're not following them already, I did drop the @ in the comments below. Definitely make sure to check her out. Let's see if I can invite Serena to rejoin. All right, I just sent the invite. Oh my gosh. How's everyone doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. If any of you are sick or have COVID, I hope you feel better. Um, we're just honestly waiting for Serena to join. Let's see if I can invite. All right, I re-invited her again. Oh my gosh. How is everyone's mental health? I know things have been crazy on my end. I am feeling a little better. I still have a sore throat and I can't taste anything still, but you know, it's better than how I was a few days ago where I felt like absolute death. Um, let's hope that Serena can get on. Otherwise, I may have to have her start the live. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm doing it one day at a time. Been drinking a lot of water. I've been quarantining, but since the CDC, not this, yeah, the CDC said that we can like unisolate after 5 days, I did take it upon myself to go for a little walk yesterday, which felt really nice. Feel like I haven't been outside in like a month. um, but besides that, I've just been trying to take it easy, not pushing myself too hard. I'm just glad that I feel better enough to do this today because I was looking forward to this for a very long time. It looks like Serena's having a few signing on, um, but I'm gonna hop right into it. So, as you guys know, I always talk about the importance of mental health, specifically when it comes to like taking care of it and self love. We always see the same things like, depression, anxiety, ADHD, and whatever. But like, what about taking care of your mental health when you don't have those issues? Because not everyone has a mental health illness, which is also important to acknowledge. I feel like we normalize mental health illnesses so much that sometimes we expect people to have a mental health illness when that's not always the case. Sometimes a person just needs help taking care of it. I know I've been struggling the past few days, but that's because I've been sick. So the things I would normally do, I haven't been doing. It looks like she is here. So now I'm going to try to get her to come back. Hi, Serena.
Hi, Raya. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm recovering well. Still sore throat and no taste, but that's better than how I was feeling, like a few
Good.
days ago. Oh, wow, you brought all your friends with you.
Everyone's joining.
Hi everyone. Okay, so I gave a brief introduction about breaking taboo and you, but I'd like you to take a moment to introduce yourself to people who may not be familiar with you, such as my followers who are just now learning about you.
Sure, yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Serena Sun. I am the founder and director of Breaking Taboo, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to breaking the taboo around mental health awareness and suicide prevention. So, what we do is we provide accessible education to the general public on matters of mental health, mental well being, emotional health, suicide prevention. We provide resources. We do a lot of media work. We do a lot of social media work. And we're also in the process of finishing up our documentary on mental health. So, yeah. Oh, and we have articles, lots of articles that we come out with all the time.
Definitely. And I'm so glad to have you here because one of my own personal goals this year was to work with more organizations and nonprofits such as yourself who deal with this type of matters. So this means so much to me. I do know you have your own version of like the mental health week coming up, hashtag breaking taboo week. Can you dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit and tell us what that's going to entail?
Of course. So we're super excited. It's going to be our first National Awareness Week. So we promote a lot of different awareness weeks from other organizations, but this one is going to be our own. So we're launching it this year. It's going to happen at the very last week of January, and it's titled hashtag Breaking Taboo Week, and it's an entire 7 days dedicated to self-love. So what we're doing is every day of the week, we're going to focus on a different aspect of self-love and self-care, and we're going to provide people with activities that they can do to take care of themselves. So let me just go down the list of what we're doing because we're super excited about it. So for this week, our Breaking Taboo Week, or this month, our Breaking Taboo Week is going to happen on Monday, January 24th to Sunday, January 30th. And it's an entire week dedicated to self-love. So for day one, on Monday, we're going to do a mental health day. So that is a day where everyone can work on their own mental health. We're coming out with activities such as, different articles for people to read and meditation tools and ways that you can better take care of your mind and your mindset. And just, overall mental health tips. And then for day two, on Tuesday, we have a self reflection day. So that is a day for everyone to really reflect on their life, what they're doing, maybe this new year, what they want to accomplish. There's no pressure around it. It's just a day for people to get used to journaling, writing down their thoughts, practicing different things. Even art, for example, is a great way to practice self-reflection. Day three is going to be Feel Your Emotions Day. So that's very important for us at Breaking Taboo. We really believe in honoring our feelings and not making any feeling bad. So I always say there's no such thing as a bad emotion. Go about it with no judgment. Allow yourself to feel and to fully accept it, heal from it. And that's where a lot of great mental health and emotional health comes from, is just the ability to allow ourselves to feel without being judgmental about it. So it's going to be the middle of the week on Wednesday. So we're really wanting people to just sit with their feelings and just accept that and be okay with it. So after Wednesday, we have Thursday, which is day four. Day four is dedicated to Self-Forgiveness Day, which again is very important for self-love. We all have to forgive ourselves for certain things that we have done in the past, maybe the things that happened during the week. It's very important for that. So it's a time for us to reflect on, what are the things that happened that we couldn't control that we can forgive ourselves for. And then day five on Friday is Self-Acknowledgement Day. So after you've forgiven yourself for all of the things that you may have not been able to control, then it's like, okay, so now it's time to acknowledge ourselves for the good things that have happened, right? So how often do we actually really do that? I know I, for one, I'm pretty bad at that sometimes. I have to remind myself, hey, you know what? It's okay. You did this, you did that. Like, pat yourself on the back. It's like a time for us to really just acknowledge ourselves and love ourselves, for all the things that we did do and all the things that we did get through. So that's Friday. And then we have our last 2 days in the weekend. So on day 6 on Saturday is physical health day. So it's Saturday, right? So we can, go outside or go to the gym or take a walk, or I don't know, if it's snowing, maybe like put on our coat and just enjoy the snow, or play like a snowball fight or something, but or even like stay home and do some yoga, right? So it's just a time for us to really practice our physical health and give ourselves a day dedicated to, taking care of ourselves physically. And then finally, on day 7, on Sunday, our last day, is just a free for all day. It's going to be titled Do Your Favorite Thing Day. So this one is probably my favorite day because it's a day just dedicated to doing whatever you want. Like, what is your favorite thing that you want to do that you never give yourself time to do? So it's like an excuse. On this Sunday of January 30th, this is the day for you to go out there, make time for yourself, and do your favorite thing. So, for example, something for me that I really love to do, I never give myself time for, I love horseback riding, but how often do I actually go horseback riding? Do I actually make the effort? Hey, I'm like book an appointment at like a horse stable and drive out there and even though I really love it and I always feel so refreshed afterwards, and it's so good for my like mental health and my emotional health, and it's really very spiritual for me. But I'm thinking maybe this Sunday, January 30th, I might do that, or at least do like, the next best thing. So yeah, so that is going to be our entire week dedicated to self-love.
Thank you, Serena, for explaining the week for us. I want to go to the self love day because it is
Mm-hmm.
something I talk about pretty often myself, both on my blog and on my Instagram. Is the importance of self love, and not necessarily generic self love, where it's like, oh yeah, I like myself, I think I'm pretty, I love myself, but it kind of goes deeper than that. It's like putting the actions behind the words. Are you taking care of your health, drinking enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you, you know, not letting your job overwork you? Are you taking care of your finances and things like that? So
Mm-hmm.
the question I want to propose to you is, why is self-love important and how does it affect your mental health?
Yeah. So self-love is so important. And self-love is one of those phenomenons that's like really interesting, where I think it's very cultural. So I'm actually writing an article about this and like really diving into the cultural aspects of self-love. It's not something that is so practiced in like certain cultures. It's almost like looked down upon. But even in the Western society, throughout history, like self-love has kind of evolved a pretty long way. It's a relatively new term that's like being thrown out there right now, and we're seeing it with positivity. But a lot of people think of self-love as like narcissism. They think of it as like selfishness. They like there's a lot of negative connotations with self-love that really at the heart of it, the way that psychologists describe it actually, that's not really self-love. We're not talking about narcissism. We're not talking about selfishness. People often mistake that because a lot of people preach, like putting yourself first, right, with self-love. I tend to think I wouldn't necessarily call it that, because in certain cultures we have a more collective mindset, which I think is also healthy, right? Can also be beneficial. And we can do that without sacrificing our own self love. Okay, so self love is really at the heart of it our self esteem. So at the heart of self love is how much do we value ourselves? How much do we, care for ourselves? How much do we allow ourselves to appreciate ourselves compassionately, without like allowing ourselves to make those mistakes, allowing ourselves to figure it out, like allowing ourselves to feel our emotions. That's another big one. Emotions and confidence are really a part of self-love. It's very important because self-love is really at the heart of mental health. It's self-love is practiced, when you're going through trying to get over an addiction. Self-love can help you. It can help people who are suicidal. It can help people who are depressed, people with anxiety. Practicing self-love and self-compassion really alleviates the symptoms of anxiety. So there's a lot of benefits of self-love. I think right now we're still at a point where we have to get over the thinking of it in a negative way and start to think of it in a positive way. And ultimately, there's no one way to self-love for everyone. Like, it's very personal, I think, like we all have our own ways of loving, and we all have our own ways of loving ourselves. Now, with that said, there are a lot of generalized practices, that overall can increase our self-love, our self-esteem, our self-confidence, and just our overall self-care. And we'll feel better. It's good for our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, and everything. So yeah, self-love is really at the heart of so many things. And I'm really glad that we're all, as a society, starting to talk about it and accept it more.
Agreed. And you're right. Self love and self care are both, they are new terms and they are becoming more mainstream. Like, you don't find a health article nowadays, more recently, that doesn't talk about, oh, self care, self love. But I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the definition has been kind of concluded and mixed in kind of with like things you're supposed to do just for like your overall health, too.
Oh, yeah.
So we're supposed to drink 8 or more cups of water a day, because we know our bodies need the water to, take care of our metabolism, physical health, et cetera, right? But I did want to backtrack to what you said about collective societies and how self-love,
Mm-hmm.
because more often than not, when we talk about self-love, it's kind of always in a westernized sense, but
Mm-hmm.
we do forget that there are some other countries, Eastern countries, Hispanic countries, Asian countries, where because it's a collective society, that individualized version of self-love may not necessarily apply. So what does self
Right.
like for someone in a more collective community?
So that's a great question, and that's actually something that I'm studying right now. There's not a lot of research around it. That's actually what I'm working on with my article, and I actually might write an entire book about it. It's just fascinating. But the the concept of love, period, that word is so different in other societies. It's not the Hollywood romanticized like version of love that we're so used to seeing in Western society. That almost doesn't really exist in many Eastern cultures. It's a little bit, if I could describe it, it's a bit more subtle and it's a bit deeper. So the word love isn't tossed around as casually as it is in Western societies. And actually, it can sometimes be looked down upon because, it's not taken as seriously, I guess, like that's like, it's like a pretty serious word with at least traditional, Eastern cultures, which doesn't make it a bad thing. It's just very different. So then you take that word and you put like self with it, right? And then in cultures that really are like selflessness is at the top of the priority list, the value system of a lot of Eastern cultures, because in order to have a collective mindset, you have to think of others first. So, you're literally trained to like think of others first, think of others first. And this really gets into a more complicated topic about mental health. Like, what is mental health, and how much of mental health that we know of today has been written by people of a certain culture. Do you know what I mean? Like, all the fathers of psychology today are actually very Western. And this is something that is talked about and just starting to get talked about in the mental health field. And we, still have to do a lot of research around it. But basically, it's a complicated question because the word love is very different. And the word self is not really thrown around as much in Eastern cultures. So with that said, I do think that, a healthy level of self-esteem obviously still needs to exist. So maybe that could be a better way in the Eastern cultures of saying it. I don't know. It's still, again, a very new term for a lot of people, but it's definitely worth exploring and, trying to figure out ways to incorporate different types of societies and cultures and how, to best practice self-love within those individual societies. Now, certain things, of course, are universal. Like if we drink lots of water, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you drink lots of water, it's good for you. If we exercise, it's good for you. If we self-reflect, it's good for you, right? If we forgive ourselves, it's good for us. Like, blah, blah, whatever. So all the like main things I think still apply. It's just the way that we think about it and we talk about it that I think we have to be a little bit more sensitive to as far as creating like an overall dynamic that fits all cultures. Does that make sense?
It sort of makes sense. For me, obviously, I grew up in a very more westernized culture because I live here in the East Side. Not only that, I live in New York of all places. So it's like I haven't been exposed to kind of that point of view when it comes to mental health. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely, there's a lot of questions within me, like is self love really about self esteem, or is it about doing what you have to do to make sure your health needs are met before you try to love someone else? Because I think a lot of times, um, when people think of self love, the reason there's such a negative connotation is we think, well, if you're worried about yourself, then you're being selfish. You're not being considerate. You're kind of being
Mm-hmm.
a narcissist. But in a way, I mean, yeah, you should be a little selfish towards yourself. I mean, if you know you need
Absolutely.
something, why not?
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't feel
Absolutely.
having like a selfish moment where you're like, I need this. I'm going to do this. And speaking for like a collective society also, how are you supposed to take care of someone else or, think of someone else's needs if you can't even, help yourself? I mean, that's the way I'm thinking of it is like if you can't take care of yourself, you cannot possibly take care of another person. And I think that applies to everyone,
Absolutely.
mothers, educators, community people,
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, in all societies, like people are taking care of themselves. Like otherwise they wouldn't be able to function, you know. Like that has to happen, and in all societies, people have to have a healthy level of self-esteem in order to do that. So that's what I mean by at the heart of it is self-esteem. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to feel confident enough to take care of yourself because what you're going to feel, and I've been there, with like depression, is a great example. There's feelings of worthlessness. There's feelings of not, loving yourself. There's feelings of like, I don't deserve to take care of myself, like what does it matter anyway, so that's like very common. If you don't have the self-esteem, which is, at the heart of wanting to take care of yourself. So, and I mean like a healthy amount of self-esteem. I don't mean like an overtly amount, which is, getting into or an overcompensation, which would be narcissism, because that's actually narcissism is actually when people don't have a lot of self-esteem and they try to overcompensate for it by covering up. So that's like a whole other topic. However, my point with the self-love and like different cultures is it's just the way that we think of the word love, right? That's what I'm trying to get at is like the word love that we know it today is very Hollywoodized, is very like romanticized, right? So I think at the heart of it, there's like different ways of saying it that might make sense to certain other cultures that might like ring deeper or more true. So that's something again that I am studying. It's very fascinating. It's really interesting to me. But yeah, it's definitely we need a lot more research into it. But there are many ways to show love. It's not love comes in many different forms. And love is not always as overtly shown as what we see in the movies. And I think that's where sometimes things get a little bit confusing to people that aren't used to how love is shown in other cultures. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's fascinating. I hope that like we talk a lot more about it in the future.
It definitely is a fascinating topic. And if you do decide to write that book, I would love to read it because that is definitely a topic that should be talked about more. I do want to talk about your points on self-esteem and confidence because I'll speak for people who are my age and younger. As a younger generation, I feel like we don't really know what the true definition. We think of confidence as like someone who can just walk around, be themselves, and doesn't care for what the world has to say. But that's not reality, because at the end of the day, there's always something that everyone has some sort of insecurity, whether
Right, right.
it
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
don't like about ourselves, whether or not we show it or look at it. Everyone has at least one thing that we're like, I wish this wasn't me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I'll tell you like the difference, just using that example is a great example. When we have a healthy level of self-confidence, we think those thoughts, we still think like, oh, man, like, oh, why did I do that? Or I don't like this about myself or whatever, right? But to get to a healthy place with it, we're okay with, the healthy way to handle that would be to accept those thoughts, to be okay with having those thoughts, and to forgive yourself for having those thoughts, and to come out of it like thinking like, you know what, that's okay. I might not like everything about myself, but that doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't make me worthless. That doesn't like mean anything, like maybe I could improve on this if I wanted to, or maybe not. Maybe I'm totally comfortable, like I have that choice to make and I'm okay with it either way. Does that make sense? Because of course, we all have things that we want to improve on, which I think is great, but it's not like basically the end all be all, the end of the world, whether or not it gets improved on. Does that make sense? Like if we don't reach this level of perfection with our bodies, then we're worthless. That would be an example of unhealthy self-esteem, you
and that's
know?
what I was, because I feel like particularly people who are maybe around my age or younger, we tend to overcompensate for the things we don't like about ourselves. So it'll be like, for example, I've always been insecure about acne because I grew up as a child who suffered really bad acne. So for me, growing up, my overcompensation used to be like, I used to try to wear like a ton of stuff on my face, or try to wear tons of jewelry or other clothing that people can look at. So they're not paying attention to my face, you know? And that overcompensation can sometimes lead to kind of other insecurities that maybe you didn't even have before, you know? So how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with one insecurity and not replacing it with a new insecurity? Like, because basically what I did was I faced with one insecurity, which was my acne, and then I created a new one, which became me being fashionable, because compared to other girls that were like me, I wasn't as high maintenance. I didn't really like getting my nails done. I wasn't the type of girl to go to the salon all the time.
Right.
I'm looking at all the other girls and I'm like, but I don't look like them. And now you're
Mm-hmm.
this vicious cycle now of consistent insecurity that you're creating for yourself. So how do you break out of that?
Well, that's a pretty complicated question. Also, there's no like one answer for it. It's not as simple as like, oh, I'll practice this one tool and then I will never have an insecurity again, because that's not realistic. We as human beings, we're always going to have insecurities to some extent, because there's always going to be something that we are striving for. To me, I think that's actually kind of beautiful in a way. It's like what makes us human. We always have something that we want, that we're trying to get at. Even if we get what we wanted before, we're probably going to have something else that we want, right? Or something else that we want to work on within ourselves. That's actually, it's healthy to want to like work on ourselves. It's healthy to, the opposite of that would be like, oh, I'm absolutely perfect. There's absolutely nothing I need to work on. Everybody else needs to like deal with me, which I also see, some like our society kind of going toward that way sometimes as well, right? So that's like the other extreme side, which is also not beneficial. So I would say, allow yourselves to have those insecurities and work on it if you want, and know that it's okay. But if those insecurities are really bothering you, like if it's like bringing you down, if you're getting obsessed thinking about it, if you find yourself like, spending most of your time staring at fashion magazines because you're so insecure about your fashion that like, you just have to like get the latest blah, 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 and it's really affecting your life, you might want to see a life coach or a therapist, or, take some personal development courses, like really work at the heart of that, because oftentimes what happens is there's something else there that's causing this, right? So there's something else there at the root of the issue that we really have to spend time working on. And that's what we talk about, like do the work. Do the work means doing the work, working on ourselves, asking ourselves these difficult questions and not being afraid to go into ourselves and our past and our childhood and figuring out like, why am I the way I am? And then doing the work with practicing, like, how can I feel better about myself? Or how can I, alleviate the symptoms of this past trauma, for example, that I experienced? Maybe when you were younger, I'm just using you hypothetically, like maybe if someone who was going through that like younger, maybe they had a traumatic experience with, their body or a comment or something that caused them to, think that they had to overcompensate with being fashionable or whatever. So then you want to get to the root of that, right? Which is why therapy and coaching and all that is so important. And I think everyone has trauma. We all should do it, We all need to work on ourselves. No one really, I think, is 100% perfect, the moment you like.
So happy
Yeah.
that you brought up therapy and life coaching
You're kind of
because,
breaking up.
oh,
Sorry, what was that? You broke up.
am I better now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I was saying that I'm so happy that you brought up therapy and life coaching because I'll admit I haven't always been a fan of like life coaching and therapy, but now that I've been doing it for a few years now, I've come to understand the importance of it. I may not still be comfortable with the idea, but I know that, it's something that I needed to make that next step into what you say, like do the work. But there's still a huge negative connotation with therapy and even life coaches even more. With therapists, I can speak for the younger part of the generation. A lot of us tend to think that therapy is a waste of money and time, and that they're not solving any immediate problems that's resulting in the mental health illnesses, like the academics, the financial, and even the trauma. And with life
Interesting.
coaching, a lot of people tend to think like, what is how do you coach someone on life? That's always like the bearing question. How in that you're not licensed as like a therapist, so like, what do you actually do, and how are you actually helping me? Because you're not giving immediate solutions to what I'm actually going through. And I think that's
Actually,
a lot of people go through what
yeah.
they go through because that's the mindset that they have. They're like, well, you're not helping me now, so what's the point in talking to you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised that you said that about the younger generation because I actually thought the younger generation was more open to therapy and life coaching. I would think. Yeah, because I would usually, like my experience, it's more of the older generation that have those stigmas around, therapists and coaches and getting like personal health and just mental health in general. So in my experience, like the young generation has been more open to therapy, at least the people that I know, are comfortable talking about their therapists and stuff and, their life coaches and whatever, just like really popular, getting more popular now. Still not popular enough, but
Yeah.
but yeah. So I would say also I wanted to bring up life coaches do work on the problem immediately. So that is actually one of the biggest differences between life coaching and therapists is that therapy can take longer. Life coaches are a bit more solution oriented because therapist's job is to get, like what we talked about earlier, to get to the root of the problem, to go to your past, to do lots of like past work and alleviate the trauma from like when you were, 5 years old and blah, 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 whatever.
Mhm.
That is a lot of what therapists are trained to do and different ways of doing that, which I think is great. Like, we all, like to me, I think we all need to get to the root of the issue. However, if there's something that you're working on that you want immediate results on like right now, and especially I think if it's career related, productivity related, motivation related, things like that, where it's like you need someone to keep you accountable. So again, that's life coaches are someone who is unbiased, not your friend, and like someone who's there to coach you and keep you accountable week by week. Like, okay, did you do this? Why didn't you do this? Like, what's the next step? What are our goals? Let's set some SMART goals. Like that's like an actual term in coaching. So
Mhm.
yeah, so their job is actually to help you with the problem immediately. Usually what they don't do is all that past life stuff. and the root stuff, which again is also important, but it is like faster. However, I do think people benefit from a combination of both. I've definitely gotten a combination of both. And I come from years of like just personal development work. I've done courses upon courses. I've read books upon books. Like I was just like fascinated with the field of personal development and human potential, but I see the benefits of both of it. The one thing that I would caution is don't go with any life coach, like anyone. That's the issue, is like, yes, there are certifications for coaches. So you do want a coach who's certified. However, that's like, there are also really good coaches who aren't certified. Like, for example, Tony Robbins, is one of them. But you do want to be careful on like, what is this person's background? What are their methods? Like, are they trained in this at all? Do they have experience in mental health? All of that stuff, because anyone can call themselves a life coach, which I think adds to the stigma of it, which is unfortunate. But with that said, there really are some pretty amazing coaches out there. And I've seen some like pretty amazing transformations happen like immediately or like within a weekend, things that might take therapy like years to do. And again, with that said, it's still important to figure out the root of the cause, why that happened, and spend that time, developing all the therapeutic work as well. Does that make sense?
Of course, I agree with you. I'm not against it. I absolutely think everyone should be getting some sort of a combination of both or one or the other if you're not comfortable with one form of a method. But with the negative stigma around, it does make it hard for a lot of people to have that faith. Like, should I do it? Is it really for me? So, like, my question would be, like, how should a person go about this step if they are looking for those resources? And after you answer that question, I do have a question in the comments, which says, they want to know how to improve your mental health without getting affected by the people you're around, which I think is a fantastic question.
How to improve your mental health without getting affected by the people around. I think I might need a bit more clarity with like what that means with being affected by the people around, because my first instinct is it's going to be impossible not to be affected by the people around you unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath. We are societal creatures. We do get affected by society. And there's a whole field of study with like, sociology and, the psychology of society and, like interconnection, human beings, whatever. And all that is great. So it's kind of impossible not to have that happen. But I think maybe the question, if I'm understanding it right, maybe what you're asking is how to not let it veer you off course with what it is that you're trying to work on. Maybe how to not let it affect you so much to the point where it actually is getting in the way of your health and getting in the way of your improvement. So I do have to say that, one great thing to work on there, and it also, again, ties in with self-confidence and self-esteem, but it's a tool, that therapists practice a lot. Boundaries. Okay, so setting boundaries is a big one. So what you want to do is learn how to set healthy boundaries with the people around you, even if it might be uncomfortable for you or for them, so practice makes perfect. And there's a fine line with setting the boundary in a non-aggressive way, I guess. That is something that, we should all practice. But yeah, it might be uncomfortable at first. In fact, a lot of people, when they first practice setting boundaries, and I've had to do this in my personal life as well, from the other side, people might actually get offended because they're not used to you saying like, hey, you know what? Like, I just have to work on myself right now, or I have to do this for me right now. Sometimes people take it personally and they're like, for whatever reason, people tend to do that and they think, oh, you're saying no to me. And it's like, I'm taking it personally. In fact, I can think of people in my life that cannot take no for an answer, and that can actually be very unhealthy for you, you know? So you have to set those boundaries. You have to know when to say no. You have to be firm in it and know that it's not about them. You know, it's not about them. Like, it's about you. And you're not trying to hurt them. You're not trying to, like, you know, uh, like do something that's like personally against them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe if you explain that to them, like they might understand a little bit more. I would also say it depends on the person you're dealing with because some people do have an issue with being told no. So
Right.
you might want to watch out for that.
I do also think it depends on who you're surrounding yourself with too. Because if you're,
Mm-hmm.
for example, if it's like your family, I can understand that it may be a little more difficult to set boundaries with certain family members. Like if it's like your parents, your sisters, it may be more difficult as opposed to like someone you barely see, like your uncle or like a great aunt or something. Um,
Yeah, that is personally, I've definitely experienced that.
And if it's like people maybe you work with or friends, then the definition of how you set that boundary may be different because this is the person you have to kind of deal with on a daily basis. The way I interpreted that question, though, I was thinking more like the things people say, because we know like
Mm.
peer pressure is a huge thing, whether you're an adult or a teen. And it's very hard sometimes not to take certain words into consideration, especially
Mm-hmm.
when it's someone that you do value, like your mom, your boss, a significant other, a partner, or whatever. So I think that also it does come down to setting healthy boundaries, but I do also think it does come down to possibly taking time, separating yourself from them a little, and saying like, you know what, right now I personally cannot be with you at this point in time because I need to work on something within myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're
Mm-hmm.
setting a healthy boundary, but you're also removing yourself from a situation that could potentially lead to a problem. That's something I've used in my own personal life because I do find that sometimes if you don't know how to set a boundary, it might be easier to remove yourself than
Mm-hmm.
to maybe say the wrong thing and then something does happen.
Yeah,
It does.
absolutely.
It
Yeah,
does.
no, that is a great practice with setting boundaries, is removing yourself from the situation. And I'd like to add that that's a very westernized approach with dealing with people. And I've had to deal with this myself. And I've had I've spoken, I've done, podcasts with people that have experienced the same thing. People from like the Eastern culture where they've gone to therapists and therapists tell them that their family is unhealthy and they need to set boundaries. They need to remove themselves from that family. Okay. So, and it doesn't usually sit well with people of a certain like culture, but I do know instances where that really has happened too. So it's very complicated. Again, this is getting into the part where it's like how much of mental health is, westernized and how much more work do we still need to do for like, other cultures where maybe, the client doesn't want that to happen, right? So I think one thing, and this is something that I'm also like in the process of studying and doing more research with, another fascinating topic for me, it's kind of controversial right now, is the cancel culture that we are currently living in, right? So
Yeah.
if you actually read about cancel culture and psychology, right, like it's not that healthy. Canceling people is actually not the most healthy thing to do, like canceling them right away, you know? At least like uh, there's like a certain level I think of communication, or at least trying to communicate, trying to like work things out with each other, like in our societies, in our lives, that should happen before we cancel them, right? But we've taken cancel culture so far to the extreme, and I see posts about this all the time, and it really makes me like kind of like angry because I'm like, how is society going to be if we can't handle anyone else's poop, right? Anyone else's like shit, because like, we are just like so done with things. And the first thing that we want to do is just like cancel them, right?
I
Like, we don't even want to work on it. We don't even want to try to like smooth things over. We don't want to reach out to them, whatever. We're just like, oh, I can't handle this. It's almost like people ADD, like as in like, okay, you know what? I'm moving on to the next thing, right? So
mm,
I'm saying like, as far as like, okay, like, you know what? Like, this doesn't work for me right now. I'm just going to move on to the next person. So it's not really something that we want to perpetuate. I think at least in the beginning, we should at least try for the people in our lives to communicate with them, work things out, practice healthy tools of like, talking to them and whatnot. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are also struggling with communication and the best ways to communicate. So it might be difficult because that's another topic that is not really practiced enough in society, right? Like, people often don't have the best communication tools, so it makes it really hard to talk to each other. Now, with that said, if you've done all this and that person is still not responsive, like not willing to respect you, not willing to like, meet you halfway, not willing to, change their behavior to, respectfully for you, it's not like a two-way street, then I would say, you might want to consider removing yourself from that situation more so. Does that make sense?
no, it definitely makes sense. And cancel culture, I've said this 1,000 times. I do not like cancel culture. I think it is inherently toxic. It's made from the feeling of anger to begin with. You're already perpetuating some sort of negative, I'm going to use the word aura. And so you're taking that negative energy that you're already feeling towards a particular person, celebrity, thing, or whatever. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
putting it on social media of all places. Something that even if you delete the post, it's there forever. People screenshot, share, retweet, etc. And now you're involving others because no one person is not affected by social media. Now, whoever you're canceling, you're also affecting the people who may be around them in their
Mm-hmm.
social, and it just keeps going. And
Yeah.
like, I understand why cancel culture came to be because it was supposed to be a tool for holding people of power and celebrities, kind of like accountable for things that they may have said in the past. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that much, and the sentiment may have been good, but what it's become is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a form of power play. It's like, well, if you say one thing I don't like, I'm gonna ruin your whole life with one thing on social media, and you can't take back what you say on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know, I have friends that are in the public eye. They have to do a lot of things, interviews, whatever, publicly. And they are honestly genuinely scared of cancel culture. Like, they have expressed to me, many of them, that like they're scared of like one small thing they said, in like one interview. They're afraid that they're going to be canceled forever. They're afraid that their career is going to be ruined. Like, they really, I think like that kind of like makes you not able to fully be open and honest, when you're talking to people, because we're getting so scared that what we say is like just going to ruin us. So on
Mm-hmm.
that aspect, it's bad. But yeah, people absolutely do have to be held accountable for
Yeah,
what they do. Like, raping people is just not
should be held,
something. Yeah.
but I think there are healthier, smarter, and certainly better ways to hold someone accountable than to use social media of all places because social media is a very big whirlpool. And like, I think something cancel culture doesn't realize is that,
Hmm.
it doesn't always end the way people want. It doesn't end with a person's, them being like, oh, I'm sorry. Their life is essentially going to be ruined. You're ending
Yeah.
careers, you're ruining lives with that. And at the end of the day, regardless of how much you don't like a person or what they did, I don't think it's ever okay to take it as far as to try to ruin their life. If you feel like that's
Mm.
where you have to go, then I would say then you definitely need to sort something out within yourself first because like you shouldn't go down that path.
Hmm.
Um
Hmm. I
someone
do have
did
to say too, I just want to add that, like, again, if you've given this person, though, many, many chances of communication and tried to talk them, whatever, and it's just not going anywhere, then yes, you might want to reevaluate your method and maybe step back for a bit. That's when I think it's okay to do a bit more of that. However, yeah, I still don't. Yeah, the whole like, okay, I can't deal with this, cutting you out of my life without even trying thing is not something I agree with.
Same. I don't agree with that as well. So I asked specifically, if someone is rude or taunts you or makes you feel down, how do you set a boundary in that type of situation? What should you do?
Yeah. Do you want to do this first? Or I mean, I could just,
I
if you
can
want to take turns.
your thought is first.
I'm sorry, what? You said you
I would
wanted to
like
hear me
to hear
first?
your thoughts on first.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so if someone is repeatedly rude to you, right? Was that the question? Like constantly rude to you and taunts you?
Yes, they said if someone is consistently rude or taunts you or makes you feel down, how do you set a boundary and exactly what should you do to set the boundary?
Ooh, yeah. That sounds kind of like bullying, which is, I am not a fan of bullying. Yeah, bullying is never right, and bullies do need to be stood up to. Okay, so yeah, you absolutely do need to stand up to situations in which you feel bullied. And I would say a healthy way of dealing with it is express to them how it makes you feel when they say those things. Okay. And it almost sometimes like that's almost like a good way of you testing this person, for lack of a better word. But if you express to a person how you genuinely feel, like if you say, you know what, when you say these things about me, it really hurts me. It doesn't make me feel good about myself. I really appreciate if you'd stop saying this because I think it's really hurtful, right? This will tell you a lot about the other person when you say this to them. They're going to react in a few different ways, right? So, for example, one way is the healthy way to react. The respectful way to react is, I'm sorry, I did not know that, or I wasn't aware of that. Oh, let me try to see it from your perspective, like, empathy. You know what? I guess by me, like calling you that name really did hurt you, and I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. I won't do it again. It's not an excuse, but I understand now. I totally get it. Please accept my apology. I'm not going to do it again. That's what you want to happen ideally, right? That would be a good person. That's like, okay, that's a good friend. That's someone that respects me. Like, this is a great friendship. We mutually respect each other. Mistakes happen. We offend each other sometimes, but we can get over it, right? And we can work it out, right? In a relationship too. However, if that person just completely denies it, blows you off, if that person's like, oh, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that's just how I talk. You either deal with it or you don't. Plenty of other people deal with it. Like, I just like, I call blah, 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 like whatever,
Mm-hmm.
all these names, whatever, like then you have to understand they're not really trying to see things from your perspective. You might want to reevaluate how you how much time you spend with that person. Remember what we were talking about, giving them chances and then seeing if they're able to work it out with you. You might want to maybe reevaluate the way that you talk to them. Okay, so maybe you need to be a little bit firmer with them in setting those boundaries. Like the moment they say something, maybe you need to speak up for yourself and say, like, no, that's not acceptable. I do not accept you saying this. That's really hurtful, and I'm just not going to accept it. And leave it up to them, and if they keep continuously doing it, even after you've told them multiple times to stop, that's when you might want to evaluate how much time you're spending with that person because you're giving them the chance, you're communicating with them. Now, the other side of that is they might really have a legitimate reason for saying something. Like maybe this person, like maybe something they said, they really weren't trying to offend you. Maybe they really were just trying to tell you something, right? In a way that the way they communicate maybe doesn't mesh with the way that you communicate. Sometimes that happens a lot. Like I can give you an example. I was originally grew up in the East Coast, right? And in the East Coast, we do a lot of like busting each other's balls, like we like, make a lot of jokes, we tease each other a lot and we say things that might sound mean, but we all know it's a joke. And like when, especially when you're close with people that you're close with, that happens a lot. The closer you are with someone, the more you bust their balls, it's just like how a way that we show friendship, right? You understand. Yeah. You're from New York. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I then moved to the West Coast, which was very fascinating, really interesting psychologically. People in the West Coast don't do that. They don't do that at all. They're extremely sensitive. Everyone is super, super nice to each other. Everyone is like very tiptoey with like the way they say things, because the last thing you want to do is hurt the other person's feelings, right? Which is nice. I mean, it's nice to like be that considerate. I would definitely say, the West Coast is a lot more considerate with the way that they word things than East Coasters are. But that's something that I had to learn and get used to. And that's something where like, there's certain situations where like I would say something and somebody would be like, oh, that's mean. And it's like, oh, like, is it mean? Oh, sorry. Like, I didn't mean that. It was a joke. And it like literally took me a while to get used to that. And I had to change my behavior a bit. Not too much where like, I didn't recognize myself anymore. I mean, I still had luckily a lot of East Coast friends in the West Coast too, who did get that. Right. But I definitely became more conscious of what I said, the jokes I made, there wasn't so much of the busting balls thing anymore. Like, in the West Coast, I just had to adapt to it, right? So I would say because I had those conversations, because I started to, realize that it's just a different culture, it's a different society, right? And I had to make that choice in myself, like, okay, what parts of my behavior do I want to change? So that I'm not taken the wrong way by people who are not used to my form of communication. Does that make sense?
It
So,
does.
but I guarantee you, if I was super just like obnoxious about it, probably, if I was just like, oh, I don't care at all, whatever, da 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 da, then really, I probably wouldn't be friends with like half the people that I'm friends with today, because they just like didn't take it that way, and that's not necessarily a bad thing too. Sometimes people really like might, again, if they don't want to change themselves for other people, then you might just be very particular, like have a very small group of people that really get you
Mhm.
and that you hang out with. It's a personal choice. So, yeah, that might, and then there's people who like can't get along with most people,
Right.
and they're okay with that. So it's definitely depends on the individual. But again, the point of answering your question for what should you do, express it to them and see how they handle it. Express your feelings to them and see how much they respect it, see how much they're willing to change. And then you have to evaluate how much are you willing to take, like, can you understand them for whatever, or if they're like genuinely like actually trying to hurt you, if you're getting that sense, then trust your instinct. Like our instincts are there for a reason. If it genuinely makes you so uncomfortable and you feel hurt every time you're with this person, then why put yourself in that situation if they're not going to change?
That's the aspect I wanted to talk about, because when it comes to bullying, as much as I would love like for it to be like if I say something then someone may acknowledge it, a lot of the time people bully with the intent of actually harming you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
usually the intent when it comes to me, because if it was just like a miscommunication, then after the first time that you say like, oh, I don't like that, the person would stop. But with bullying, it's a consistent action to harm you, whether it's verbally, mentally, or physically.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, I personally, my answer would be like, you know, if you told them this hurts you and they continue this action, then their intent is not to try to understand you. Their intent is harm. And you
Mm-hmm.
need to protect yourself. I don't condone violence, except for, if someone hits you first, then I grew up in a family where, like, if you get hit, you hit them back. You don't let someone hit you. But you do not allow someone to just push you over and continuously to harm you either, because your feelings and well-being does matter. In that situation, I would limit any and all communications, keep it to a professional, cordial level. You only talk to them if you absolutely must. If there's no one else to talk to, you have to work with this person, then yeah, obviously you have to do what you have to do to complete the job. But if you do not have to communicate with them, I would not communicate with them. That would be the point where I'm like, you know what? That's it. I'm cutting them off, because you should not have to go through harm for
Mhm.
someone to get the point, even if it's someone you're close to. If they're not understanding the first time you tell them that it hurts you, and they are trying to now deliberately just harm you, don't put you shouldn't stay in that situation. At that point, it's okay to just tell a person, you know what, do not talk to me. I do not want to talk to you.
Mhm.
Your only
And
intent is to harm me, and I care about myself too much to allow someone like you continuously to push me over. At some point, if you stand your ground and you do this, at some point, the person bullying is going to realize, like, you know what? This is not affecting them no more. And they'll do one or two things. They'll either move on to a new person.
Mhm.
That's the reality that I've witnessed. Is sometimes they just move on to the next person. The
Mhm.
next person they see they can attack. Or they start looking within themselves and they're like, you know what? This is wrong. I don't want to be a bully. And they change. But you have to
Mhm.
stand your
Mhm.
ground and protect yourself.
Yeah, it's very difficult because bullies are kind of relentless, they really are. And it, bullies are, it's very difficult to change the behavior of a bully because if they are a true bully and they really want to inflict harm on other people, there's a lot there they got to work on. Like it's not one of those things where you're likely to change their entire mindset with like just one conversation. I mean, not saying it can't happen. I'm sure like it does happen, but just don't bank on it. So if they really are a bully and they're just constantly like trying to hurt you, then yeah, I would definitely try to remove yourself from that situation. The other thing is, it can get dangerous. It really can. I mean, yeah, you want to stand up for yourself. You don't, because the other complicated thing is bullies really feed on fear. They do, they feed on fear. If they like sense that this person is a victim, and like easy target, they might target this person more. So, it's very complicated situation where they can get dangerous also. So the best thing to do is try to avoid them. Like I'm especially talking to people who are like in high school or middle school or whatever, in those situations, if you can just not put yourself in like the path of the bully, that might be the safest way. However, I also do understand when you're growing up as an adolescent, like, there's a lot of things that you have to learn, and learning to stand up for yourself is definitely one of those big challenges as well. So how do you do it in a way that's safe? That's like not an easy question to answer, and it's different in every situation. But yeah, I will have to say I was bullied when I was in sixth grade. Oh, I 100% was like bullied in sixth grade because I was different. Because like, I came from, like my parents were really strict. They wouldn't let me wear the latest fashion. They wouldn't let me like whatever. Like I had weird clothes. Like I like wore glasses. All the stupid things that kids bully you for. And it was tough. It was really tough. Like there's no thinking back to it now, it's not like, oh, if I did this, they would have stopped bullying me. Like, I don't think, honestly, there was anything that was in my control that I could have done for those kids to not bully me. And that's something that I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that, right? I'm not like beating myself up over that. I understand kids are stupid sometimes, they bully each other and it sucks. But yeah, anyway, luckily
Yeah,
it wasn't like forever. So,
right. Same here. I was bullied a lot because, being half Spanish and half black in the early 2000s in the
mhm.
Bronx of all places, where even though there's a million cultures living and residing in New York City, for some reason that was like the abnormality. So
Oh,
definitely
interesting.
I definitely can relate. But if you are in high school, middle school, or younger, you do have the benefit of having teachers and people who do care and are there for the sole purpose of making sure that your well-being is protected. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you cannot handle it no more, you've avoided them like the plague and they keep coming, tell someone, your parent, your best friend, your mother, your favorite teacher. It's better to have one person know than no one, to be honest. Even if they themselves can't do anything, because that protects you. But I do want to go to because it is 1 o'clock. So um, I'd like to end this with my five little questions that I normally have for like the end. My
Okay.
first question is, where do you see breaking taboo going in the future as far as in the industry of mental health and where you guys stand?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big question. We see ourselves going in a lot of a lot of places, many places. We are making waves and we want to continue to make waves. We want to create huge change around the way that mental health is viewed in society and the way that it's talked about and the way that it's taught. So, hopefully breaking taboo programs will be in educational school systems across the country. We're international as well, so branching off from there, hopefully, in just in as many schools as possible that we can get to. Our documentary, of course, but hopefully when it's over, after we finish shooting and all that, we would love for everyone to be able to get a copy of the documentary, to be able to easily assess it, access it, sorry, and be able to watch it from the comfort of their own homes, right? Because that's the point. Because the more people that we reach, the more lives we can save, right? So that's why we're making education accessible. Of course, continuously with our social media work and whatnot, like everyone's on social media now, it's like a great platform for just creating change. I think that, is what we're trying to do. Instead of just posting the usual stuff, like at least we can use it to create some change and do some good out there. So, yeah. So I guess like those are the first and foremost things. We definitely are looking forward to when we can hold events safely again, and some art shows, art galas, things like that, where some of our artists. Actually, all of them have gone through some mental health challenges of their own, and they create some beautiful art for us around the topic that we'd love to share. So, yeah,
That's great.
that's in the future.
Where you guys go. And I'm also excited for that potential one day to be published book that you're working on.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I have so many projects that it
it,
like
I mean, there's no better time than the present. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
question would be, what is the importance of mental health education? And what can people do today to further educate themselves on these mental health matters?
Oh, okay. Well, the importance of mental health education, I would say, is it's everywhere. Like mental health is everywhere. You cannot have health without mental health. Mental health is not something outside of you. We all have mental health. We all have a mind. Our brains literally are, the central controllers of every single thing that we do. So when you think of it that way, like our brains are like the most important parts of our bodies. It even regulates like our hearts and, like whether or not we stay alive and everything. So in that aspect, mental health, at least to me, someone who's so passionate about it, is probably the most important, arguably, like one of the most important healths, that we can work on. So, most important aspects of ourselves that we can work on. So, how do we work on it? We have to learn. We have to learn these tools. We have to practice these tools. We have to work on our well being. We have to, do things that are good for our minds. So, that's why mental health education is so important. Also, it can literally save lives, right? So, what we do at Breaking Taboo, we save lives from suicide ultimately because, suicide is a last resort. And it often happens because of the shame and stigma surrounding being able to tell people that you're feeling depressed or that you're thinking, suicidal thoughts or whatever, or getting help for it, or, there's just a lot of reasons why it goes to that last resort part that doesn't need to happen. That's why they say that 90% of suicides are preventable because, you know, not saying that it's like other people's fault, but saying that, there, if we were able to do something about it earlier, whatever, give people the resources, get help, all of that, then maybe it wouldn't have been a last resort type thing, if that makes sense. So it's very important, extremely important for mental health education.
And what can people do today to further their own mental health education? What are some resources they should seek out if they want
Yeah.
that education?
Well, first of all, breaking taboo. So
Right.
going on our website, breaking-taboo.org, right? So we have a lot of resources there already. We have tons of resources, always coming out with articles in easily digestible terms, so everyone can read it and understand it. Where we take, all the latest research on different psychological aspects, and we, talk a lot about different topics in mental health, and we create articles for people to read. So yeah, so that's definitely one way. Also, our social media, we're constantly providing tips on mental health, constantly, just all of our posts on Instagram have to deal with mental health, so it's great to like just see in your feed and get some daily tips and reminders on how we can better take care of ourselves. And then there are a lot, I would say, honestly, if you search it online now, which is amazing because even just a few years ago, there weren't this many like resources on mental health. But if you want to learn about mental health, just do the research. Just go online and like type in literally mental health education or like type in whatever it is that you're trying to learn. I mean, there's so many resources out there that you can draw from now. Another thing is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, getting help for yourself, going to a professional who can help you with your mental health. Yeah, and working on it from there. There are lots of support groups out there, that you can search for. So again, going online and, searching up support group for dot, 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 and joining those support groups, meeting like-minded people is very helpful. So yeah, we're in a great place now compared to the past where there are so many resources that we can draw from and so many different ways to learn about mental health.
I definitely agree, and it looks like some of the people who are watching also agree. My next is going to be, what is one self care, self love, or mental health tip you want to leave today that people should be doing in their everyday lives?
Ah, what is one? Just one?
One.
Oh man, that's tough. Um, I would say self-compassion. I would say it's self-compassion, at least right now. That's the most important thing that even I constantly am working on as well. So again, self-compassion slash self-love, they're obviously very interrelated, but being able to forgive yourself for the things you didn't know about, before, being able to not beat yourself up for, certain mistakes that you have made, being able to tell yourself like, hey, it's okay. Like being compassionate, like, what am I feeling right now? Am I stressed right now? Like, that's okay. It's really alleviates the stress. Like, instead of being like, oh, I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. Gotta get this done. Gotta do this. Gotta do this. Gotta do this. Instead, like maybe come about it with a more compassionate view and just think, you know what? I'm stressed out right now. I recognize that. It's okay. I can be compassionate to myself about it. Everyone gets stressed out, like I'm all right. It's not the end of the world,
Mm-hmm.
if this, and this doesn't happen, it's a normal feeling. Like I'm going to allow myself to be okay with whatever it is that I'm feeling and not beat myself up over it. Well, I think we as human beings, we do tend to carry a lot of guilt also sometimes when we feel certain ways that we don't think we should be feeling. But ultimately, again, it's what makes us human, you know? Like, we all get angry sometimes, we all get sad sometimes, like, allow yourself to feel that. Be compassionate with yourself before it turns into something unhealthy. Before you, uh, like suppress that and bottle it up and it erupts in like a really, bad way. Just, yeah, if we're compassionate to ourselves, I think it's very important.
Beautifully said. And I can't agree more, honestly. I think it starts with forgiving yourself. If you could forgive yourself for things that you know were not in your control, forgive yourself for how you're feeling, I think that's the first step to becoming a healthier and happier version of yourself, which is what we all want at the end of the day. My final question is, if someone is interested in, let's say, volunteering with you, talking
Oh,
more to you, um, breaking taboo overall,
yeah.
besides the website, which I plugged into the comments, where else can they find Breaking Taboo?
Well, we're on social media. So at Breaking Taboo is our social media handle. So if you DM us and you mention, that you want to volunteer, there's always a ton of volunteer opportunities that we have, and all of them virtual right now, which, you can literally volunteer anywhere. We've had people volunteer from like different parts of the world too, like Philippines, Pakistan, India, like tons, just the UK, Australia. So that's what's awesome about our technology today, is that we're able to do that. So yeah, just shoot us a DM on Instagram if you want to. Yeah, or we have a contact form on our website. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't usually give out my email because I get a ton of emails. So I would say probably the best way is we have the contact form, the volunteer form on our website, breaking-taboo.org, and or sending us a DM on Instagram, Twitter, yeah, wherever, TikTok. We're on all of those platforms.
Nice. Serena, I do want to thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
Very educational and helpful for me. I'm sure whoever watched the entire thing and asked their question, I'm sure you helped them a lot. So again, I really do appreciate you joining me today. It means the world. Thank you, Serena.
Yeah, thank you, Raya. It was awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great conversation. Well, we covered a ton of topics I wasn't expecting to cover, but I like that because it's real, it's authentic, and that's the type of conversations that we're all about, is those genuine, authentic, sometimes difficult conversations that need to be had. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to do that.
Of course. And this will be available as an IGTV in a few minutes. When the live ends, it will be on my page and under the IGTV tab forever. So you can
Forever. Ah.
forever. So you can come back and view it as many times as needed. Um, I don't think anyone has any other questions that I'm seeing. So I think this is the end of it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Raya. Have a
Of
great
course.
weekend. Have a great weekend, everyone. Don't forget to practice self-love. Don't forget about hashtag Breaking Taboo Week at the last week of January. And I hope you join us in doing some awesome self-love stuff for 7 days.
So anyone who's following me will see the hashtag breaking taboos. So make sure you pay attention for that on the days that
Awesome.
I do join, and I'm not.
Awesome.
Um, Right.
Cool.
Stay
Okay,
healthy
Raya.
and safe, and I hope you have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.